Welcome to Catholic Audio Media Weekend. Today we're going to interview Sister Betty Ann McNeill, Daughters of Charity, D.C. And you might say, "Whoa, great. Who is she?" Well, she is an expert on St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. She is also the editor of a new release of an older book. So it's a new edition of an older book. The book is called St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, A Spiritual Portrait, second edition of the soul of Elizabeth Seton. She's written the foreword of this new edition, so definitely want to check that out. It's from Ignatius Press, and you can find that at ignatius.com and on your favorite brick and mortar bookstores, and also online bookstores as well. Sister Betty Ann McNeill explained wonderful aspects of the life of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, and we learn as we talk about this, we get away from the idea of the plaster saint, that perfect person, and we realize we see her through Sister Betty Ann of who she truly is. Let's switch over to our interview. Go ahead.
Shall I begin in the beginning, or shall I?
You begin anywhere you think our listeners need to hear.
In relation to Elizabeth Seton, I first met her when I was in grade school and read my first full biography in high school, and was fortunate enough to join a group of young women who were coming to Emmitsburg for a Marian Congress, a youth rally in 1963. And it was the same weekend that she was beatified.
Oh, wow.
So I was right there standing beside her tombstone when the bells rang, indicating that she was now Blessed Elizabeth Ann Seton.
Wow.
And a few years later, I decided to join the Daughters of Charity, and believe it or not, as one of the youngest members of the community, I won the lottery. I won a trip to the canonization with 40-some other sisters. And I was one of the youngest to attend. So I was, as a child, signed petitions for Elizabeth Seton's cause to go forward. I was in Emmitsburg on her holy grounds when she was beatified, and I was at the scene in Rome for the canonization. So I've been retelling her story for 50 years. Wow. But I discovered in her as a child that she and I had similar backgrounds. She'd lost her parent as a at a very young age, as I had. She lived by the seashore, and I lived by the Atlantic Ocean. She loved to beachcomb and pick up seashells. So we had a lot in common, including my mother was an Episcopalian, and I was going to the Episcopal Sunday school. So that kind of introduced me to Elizabeth Seton. I felt a kinship and have found her a person of a great model and a person of great inspiration all my life, and have delved into her story as a wife, widow, mother, foundress, self-directed woman rooted in faith. She really faced a lot of adversity, but she did it with grace.
And of course, she is known as the first native-born American saint.
Yes, that is correct.
But she's a convert.
She is a convert. When her husband was ill with tuberculosis, and they traveled to Italy for health reasons, for the warm climate. Unfortunately, he died there, and she encountered, through his friends that provided hospitality, she encountered Roman Catholicism for the first time, and went to her first Mass and began asking questions out of curiosity, really, and then out of genuine interest as she became more and more curious and interested. And as an Episcopalian, she was a very active woman of faith who reached out in charity to widows with young children, and worked with women to form an association to like a social service outreach, social ministry. And she liked very much to receive Holy Communion in the Episcopal Church when they had communion services. So in Italy, encountering the sacrifice of the Mass and seeing Holy Communion distributed, she really became deeply interested in the Holy Eucharist, and it was like a magnet because she learned that we truly believe this is the body and blood of Christ. And that just animated her with deep zeal and devotion. She also encountered a large painting showing Mary, the mother of Jesus, receiving the corpse of her son after the crucifixion, and she was deeply touched by Mary as a sorrowful mother. And years later, Elizabeth Seton would lose 2 children to premature death as teenagers. So she knew personally what grief meant.
Sure.
And she had her fair share of struggles because her mother died when she was little. Her father remarried. So she grew up in a blended family that was full of marital conflict. And at one time was tempted to do a drug overdose, but said no to drugs. So she's someone who I think can be a model for young people struggling with issues or for married people struggling with all kinds of family and health issues and parental issues.
She was tempted to do a drug overdose?
Yes, as an adolescent. I would
Wow.
say she went through an adolescent depression as a result of her father and stepmother's marital conflict and their rejection of a friend of hers who was marrying into the family, and just the division, the animosity, the acrimony between the stepmother and her father.
And at that age, the teenagers tend to blame themselves for the trouble with their parents.
Yes, and she had, at that time, was living away from her father and stepmother because the father had gone to England to study advanced medicine and surgery, and so she was living with relatives, with an aunt and uncle. And there were times she thought her father didn't love her, didn't care for her. He was far removed. It's like the 2 oldest children were discarded and sent off to relatives as they saw it. But the father was also separating Elizabeth and her sister, her older sister, from the stepmother, since there was acrimony. The stepmother seemed to prefer her own 6 or 7 children to the 2 older girls. So family conflict.
I've seen that happen before. You know that the natural children of one marriage, and yes, I've seen that happen before. Well, that's fascinating. And so she can be a great model to those children that are brought up in that kind of an environment, which is not uncommon today.
Exactly. And certainly for us as Catholics, saints are those who are in heaven with God, but a saint is a model and an intercessor. So as a model, she's experienced so many life experiences that contemporary folks go through at various ages. And as intercessor, anyone can turn to her to ask for favors with God.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the powerful things that we have with that intercession is you can relate with someone who's been through something similar.
Yes. So
I love to.
Seton she's a woman, but she's a person for all ages, not just a model for women, but a model for any man, woman, child, or youth, teenager, going through whatever.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the saints are like that, and this is fascinating. Like I'm learning this. I did, because there is the whole story of Thomas Merton talks about the plaster saint, and
yes.
And there you have that whole, the saint was this perfect person and everything else. And of course, that's not true. And when you tell stories like this really brings the reality of the person to us.
Well, this is why I say she's not a plaster saint. She's not just a statue on a pedestal, but she was a woman who walked through life just as we do and stumbled sometimes and had her dark moments and needed her personal space. She used to go for walks in the woods to kind of get away from it all. That was her way of turning off the cell phone, I would say.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a good point. And now we're talking, if I'm not wrong, and I could be wrong here, wasn't she born before the country declared independence, or was she born after?
She was born in 1774, and she was
Okay.
technically born in the British colony of New York.
Mm-hmm.
The United States was born in 1776. She
Yes.
lived in the midst of the founding fathers, shall we say, and
Sure.
in New York. And when she married, actually, Alexander Hamilton lived a couple of doors down the street from her. She lived
Really?
at 27 Wall Street. So she knew the VIPs of the day. She knew the influencers of the day. And her father and her father-in-law also. Her father-in-law was the first, shall we say, manager. They used a different term, cashier, they called it, of the First Bank of New York, which was Alexander Hamilton set it up.
Wow. And so you're literally talking Wall Street as in where the stock market is today.
Exactly. And she was a parishioner of Trinity Church. Now, that's right down the street, but it's not the same building that she knew. But her stepfather, father-in-law, pardon me, the senior Mr. Seton was buried in the churchyard of Trinity Church.
And that's the Episcopal Church.
Yeah, the Trinity Episcopal Church. And she worshiped there, although her favorite place of prayer was right down the street at St. Paul's Chapel, which was famous at the time of 9/11 for being the center of care, pastoral care and emergency respite care for the firefighters and emergency personnel.
Wow. So there, and now I'm trying to, I go to New York a lot. I live in the Boston area. I mean, not every week or anything, but when I have a chance, I get down there. And of course, if Wall Street looks into Boston Harbor, New York Harbor, towards Staten Island.
Yes. And her father, Dr. Richard Bailey, had a, shall we say, clinic on Staten Island, and he became the first medical officer of the Port of New York, which was at Staten Island, and that's where the immigrants arrived and were screened.
I'll begin by asking the question I always ask. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Wow. So he would have had to take a boat every day to work, right?
Well, yes, but he built himself a little house over there on Staten Island, and she would sail over. She and the children would sail over for visits with Daddy, shall we say.
Isn't that something? Wow.
And her grandfather was an Episcopal priest at St. Andrew's Church on Staten Island, which is in the Richmond Town historic area, and that's where her relatives are buried.
Wow. Now, she, how old was she when she converted?
When she converted, about 29 off the top of my head. It was in 1805, yes. And it was a struggle. She went through about an 18-month an emotional period of distress, trying to seek truth about the Eucharist, but about the apostolic succession, because she really and truly wanted to join the church that succeeded from the apostles. Right.
And she was trying to discern that the Catholic Church was in fact that church.
Yes, and when she came back from Italy and mentioned this to her family and friends, they were aghast. And so her pastor, her Episcopalian minister, John Henry Hobart, gave her books to read, et cetera, and she was intellectually pulled because she'd read one set of information and then she'd read something that conflicted with it. And she was just in a turmoil, and it was very, very difficult. So finally, she just put her foot down and says, I'm going to go to the Catholic Church, and I'm going to try to be a good Catholic.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
she made her profession of faith at St. Peter's Church on Barclay Street and received her first communion the next Sunday. And then Archbishop John Carroll confirmed her the following year. And for her confirmation name, she took the name Mary, because she said between Mary, Anne, and Elizabeth, she had the mysteries of salvation.
Oh.
Mary, the mother of Jesus, and the mother of Mary, and Elizabeth, the mother of John.
Oh, isn't that fascinating?
And so frequently she would sign her name, in later years, MEAS, and that didn't mean mother. It meant Mary Elizabeth Ann Seton.
Elizabeth Ann Seton, yes. Now, you said John Carroll. Going back to my history, there was a John Carroll that was connected to the Declaration of Independence, or the physical act of declaring independence.
I think maybe it was his cousin, Charles Carroll.
Oh, okay.
John Carroll is the Catholic bishop, and he had a prominent cousin, Charles. And then there was a Daniel Carroll out here in Maryland.
And so she develops her Catholic faith. She converts. She develops her Catholic faith. Isn't she like the mother of Catholic education?
One could say she was a pioneer of Catholic education, particularly education for girls, because there were no schools for girls at that time, particularly for families who had little money and couldn't send their girls to a fine academy. But regarding her early days as a Catholic, her primary support in the church was a Father Michael Hurley, who was the first Augustinian candidate and first ordained priest of the Augustinian order. So had Father Michael Hurley not entered the Augustinians, we might not have our present Pope Leo XIV, an Augustinian from the United States.
From the United States. So when you're saying he was the first Augustinian, that means first Augustinian in the United States?
In the United States, the first candidate who was ordained an Augustinian. And he really was a dear friend of Elizabeth Seton in her first years as a Catholic.
Wow.
At that time when she was struggling economically to support her family before she, by chance, encountered Father William Dubourg, who was on his way to Boston to raise money for his school in Baltimore. And he met her and saw that she was very interested in teaching and was struggling to get a job. And that's when he invited her to Baltimore. And then later John Carroll approved of it. And the rest is history.
Now, as I think about there is that Baltimore connection.
Yes,
did she ever? Did she have anything to do with Emmitsburg?
She had everything to do with Emmitsburg. The Sulpicians had invited her to Baltimore, as she and they decided either maybe a religious community could evolve, because if priests established a religious community for a school, then you had automatically a faculty. That was kind of the way it went in Europe. So when some of the Sulpicians knew that some of their directees were really interested in living a consecrated life and were thinking of going to Spain to join a convent, they talked to her and their confreres and decided to suggest the idea of forming a community. And she bought into that, and they suggested that it be modeled on the French Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul, who were not cloistered. And, well, they could accept widows. Now, she was a widow and she had children. So it was a model with a mission and a spirit that they were familiar with, but could be easily adapted to the United States. So it was there in Baltimore that the women joined her, and then a young man came who was a seminarian and saw the potential, and he had money. He had to empty his bank account to receive the tonsure, and he offered to fund a school and a continuum of services, but as he specified, it would be in Emmitsburg. So he bought the property, and she and the 6 women that had joined her, came to Emmitsburg and established the Sisters of Charity of St. Joseph's and the St. Joseph School, that then became kind of like a pioneer to Catholic education. But her school was really a school for young girls who were from families lacking financial means. And then, in order to raise money, she opened up to accepting students from families who could pay tuition. And then from that school developed St. Joseph Academy, and years later, St. Joseph College in Emmitsburg. And of course, she lived out her mission, and women joined her in Emmitsburg, and she inculcated the Vincentian charism. She was the first to inculcate it in the United States. And she died here in Emmitsburg in 1821. And fast forward, this is the site of the National Shrine of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, where her relics, her remains are interred. It's a pilgrimage site. Her 2 historic homes are intact and available for visitors and pilgrims to tour. And the shrine is open as a beautiful, beautiful museum with many of her artifacts, and the story of her story and the story of American Catholicism and the cause for canonization, because she was the first native-born to be canonized.
That's right.
Now, Francis Cabrini was the first citizen to be canonized, but actually St. Rose of Lima is the first American to be canonized, South America.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Oh, now you mentioned, yes. Well, and interesting enough, Mother Cabrini is buried up in
Chicago.
No, she's in New York.
Oh, is she in New York? Okay, I was in Chicago, where a shrine is there with her relics.
Shrine, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, she has relics also in New York.
Okay.
And there's a shrine there, and a school there to Mother Cabrini.
I'm not familiar with that one. Okay.
It's in it's a part of New York, Washington. Something tells me Washington Heights, but I could be completely wrong. But we've run trips down there.
I see.
To that, yes. We're going to talk more with Sister Betty Ann McNeill after we take a quick break and learn more about St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. Fascinating story. We learn about this first native-born American saint. We'll be right back right after this. Did you know that the Catholic Audio Media podcast is available on various podcast platforms? You can find us, among others, on Podbean, which is our home platform. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, among others. Just look for Catholic Audio Media, all one word. On some platforms, such as Spotify, look for Catholic Audio Media, 3 words, and subscribe and listen to the Catholic Audio Media podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at CatholicAudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back, and we're here talking with Sister Betty Ann McNeill. She is the editor of the second edition of this great biography of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. It's called St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, A Spiritual Portrait, second edition of The Soul of Elizabeth Seton, written by Father Joseph Dervin. And Sister Betty Ann McNeill also writes the foreword to this book. And as I said, she is the editor. So we're going to switch back to the second half of our interview with Sister Betty Ann McNeill, Daughters of Charity, and hear more of the fascinating reality of America's first native-born Catholic saint. So now, I would assume there isn't any direct connection to the Mother Elizabeth Ann Seton to Seton University, except for the name. I mean, she didn't found anything at Seton University or anything, did she?
Well, actually, there is a connection.
Really?
Her half-nephew, James Roosevelt Bailey, was ordained an Episcopal priest, converted to Roman Catholicism, became the first bishop of Newark, New Jersey, and founded Seton Hall University.
Isn't that something? I didn't know that.
Named it after his beloved aunt, his saintly aunt or aunt, depending upon pronunciation preferences. And
Here in Boston, it's aunt.
okay, and James Roosevelt Bailey subsequently became bishop and archbishop in Baltimore and asked to be buried at Emmitsburg near his saintly aunt. So he too is buried in Emmitsburg.
Wow. Now, I have to ask this question. I don't know if you know the answer to it, but since the name Roosevelt, and we were talking the New York area, did it have any connection to the Roosevelts?
Certainly. Dr. Richard Bailey's first wife died. His second wife was Charlotte. Wait a minute, let me get this straight. Charlotte Amelia Barclay, whose mother was a Roosevelt.
Oh, wow.
And I don't have the genealogy chart in front of me, but it is the Roosevelt family.
The Roosevelts. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's an indirect connection.
And that's so fascinating because you're talking about the first American saint, and of course, we're during this time of the first American pope, but we have this Catholicism here in the United States that has this great embrace of the American ideas, that many of whom are built on Catholic idea of natural law and everything else. So it's a fascinating thing when it all seems, or there are so many links that come together with this first native-born American saint in the early days of this country.
Oh, absolutely. She was a woman of a child of the colonial era, and a woman of the New Republic.
Wow.
There's no question about it. Now, they did not have the internet and all of the means of communication. The sisters and herself were seriously impacted by, shall we say, the War of 1812, and then previously the non-declared war between, I think it was France and England, and there was piracy on the seas. That's what led to the demise and bankruptcy of the Seton family fortunes and the bankruptcy of the company under her husband's management. It was not poor management, but it was bankruptcy because of the piracy deal. They were they were in international commerce, maritime.
Wow. And one of the issues of the piracy was the Barbary States, wasn't it?
Yes. I'm sure it was.
And if I'm not wrong, at that point, President Thomas Jefferson had some connection to, or maybe I'm thinking of someone else. But I think there was, or maybe I'm thinking of Monroe or Madison, or one of the forefathers who was president had some major issue to deal with the piracy.
Well, that might have been part of the War of 1812, but the bankruptcy of the company, of the family firm, occurred in 1798. And the good news was that the new republic, the United States, had recently enacted a law to protect against financial loss, i.e. the bankruptcy law. And he was able to take advantage of that.
Wow.
Without going into all of, the details of it.
Right.
But Elizabeth Seton can be studied as an American woman and as a Catholic woman and as a woman who lived her life to the fullest in her various roles, wife, mother, widow, etc. She almost died in childbirth once, and her baby was born not breathing. The father had to resuscitate it. And to the two children, and one son went off to the U.S. Navy, and the other one became a civil servant sailing with the United States Navy.
Which back in that time was as we used to, I'm a Navy veteran myself. Back in that time was the days of iron maiden wooden ships. Yes,
I'm sure it must have been. And the second son, Richard, was on an international tour at the time of his mother's last illness and death, although he didn't know that. And they went into the port of Liberia. And the American consul there was ill and others, and he did some charitable work and ministered to them and began not feeling well, went on the ship and died. And so Richard was buried at sea. And he was a kid that his mother always worried about him. He was kind of I don't need to go to school, or what the heck. And she really worried about him. But in the end, his act of charity superseded any of his misdemeanors of his youth.
Sure. Wow. And I'm sure somewhere in the United States Navy rolls, his name must be listed, having basically served the country and having died in his service to the country.
And he was a civil servant, yes, I'm sure. And I personally did the transcription for the letters of William Seton that are in the United States Archives.
You did?
Yes. As a citizen archivist, yes, I did. It's not a lot. It's maybe a half dozen or so. But so he's on record, too. And her daughter, her fourth daughter, and only surviving daughter, lived quite an interesting life with her brother after the mother's death. She was well educated and supposedly a lovely woman and quite competent with music and languages. And she toured Europe at least once, maybe twice with her brother. But then at midlife decided God was calling her to live a consecrated life and joined the Sisters of Mercy of New York as the first postulant from America, probably with some influence by Bishop John Hughes. But that young woman who entered at about age 45 and whose mother worried about her as a child, she died at the tender age of 91.
Oh, wow.
After serving for 45 years in prison ministry at Sing Sing.
Wow. The history is fascinating.
Yes.
And if I'm not wrong, at St. Patrick's Cathedral, there are images of various saints connected to New York, one of them being St. Elizabeth Ann Seton.
Yes. And they have recently, in recent years, restored or replaced a lovely niche or altar to her.
Wow. When did her oldest child die?
Her oldest child, Anina, she died at age 16, shall I say? And I think
sorry.
She was, the oldest daughter, Anna Maria, was 16 when she died, and she died in, she was born in I don't have the thing directly in front of me. I think it was 1812 that she died.
Well, what I actually meant from that question was the child that lived the longest.
91. She was 91.
And when did she die?
Okay.
So it had to be close to the 20th century.
All right. She was born in 1800, and I think she died in 1891.
So that child lived through our entire history, almost of the entire 1800s.
Yes,
including the Civil War, and wow.
Yes.
I mean, this is fascinating, and to be able to trace that all back to Mother Elizabeth Ann Seton. When did she die?
Elizabeth Seton died in 1821 on January 4th.
So how old was she when she died?
46.
Wow. And she had accomplished all of this and converted and discovered and all this in those 46 years.
Yeah, very simply. She was only in Emmitsburg, shall we say, since 1809. So from 1809 to 1821 was her second major vocation, shall we say.
Yeah.
As foundress and administrator, etc., and spiritual mother.
And that's only 12 years. Wow.
That's right. And remember, without electricity and central heating and air conditioning and plumbing.
Well, that's true. And now again, go back to my history. The telegraph isn't anywhere around this time at all. It's many, many years later.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So you don't have. You're right. You don't have any.
No, communication was by letter.
That's right. Yeah. Wow.
And there would be couriers, horseback riding for special delivery.
Yes, that's right. This is fascinating. And so what would you describe her legacy today?
I would think her legacy in some ways could be twofold. It's from a faith perspective, focusing on God's will and being a woman of hope and courage and embracing events and seeing Christ in the person of the poor, serving those in need. And then I think as an active woman, she was an educator, an administrator, an organizer, an enabler in the best sense of the word. And I think that would be summed up in the word we use today as a formator. She helped to form her students for the world they were destined to live in. And that's kind of a take on her own terminology.
And so we could trace back some of these institutions you had mentioned. And it is the order, obviously, it's still very, very much around.
Yes,
and all these things.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
The Sisters of Charity at Emmitsburg in 1850 united with the French Daughters of Charity. But the Sisters of Charity in New York are directly from Elizabeth Seton, as are the Sisters of Charity of Cincinnati, and those two worked together to establish the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth. And the New York Sisters established the Sisters of Charity of Halifax. So there's various groups that trace their roots to Elizabeth Seton and the rule of Vincent de Paul, and we all collaborate together in the Sisters of Charity Federation. So her work is very much alive and well.
And you are a daughter of charity.
I'm a daughter of charity living at Emmitsburg. Yes.
Now, your order is most famous. Well, I don't know if it's most famous, but it's famous for running hospitals.
Well, actually, in the United States, Elizabeth Seton sent sisters to Philadelphia to manage the first Catholic orphanage in the United States.
Really?
Yes, and also she sent sisters to New York to establish the first Catholic orphanage in New York. So her missions and her education mission that she started in Emmitsburg, and it was ministry at Mount St. Mary's, those all continue in one way or another today. The Emmitsburg community that joined the Daughters of Charity, even before 1850, we were serving in general hospitals and hospitals around the country. But we have been known for hospital administration, yes, but also education and Catholic social ministry. The Vincentian charism is reaching out to persons in need and promoting a more just world. So it's very inclusive.
And you have a whole history of doing that.
Yes, and in Boston we had Kearney Hospital.
That's right. Yes, that's why the one thing I thought of.
Nazareth Home. I used to think that my grandfather started Kearney Hospital until I found out it was a different Kearney.
Oh, okay.
Different Kearney family.
Unfortunately, it's closed today.
I know, with regret, but the name lives on. My father's people are from Boston.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, I'm a hospital chaplain now.
Oh, okay.
And I work for two hospitals. One of them is Boston Medical Center. I work in the now Brockton Hospital of that chain. And many of the people, or some of the people who work there, worked for the Kearney, and now they're in Brockton. So that connection comes up. Yes, I used to be in the Kearney. Now I'm here. So the Kearney name, the Kearney heritage, still lives on.
Yes, it does. Well, that's good. Even if it's a different branch of the family.
That's true. Yes. Well, this has been a wonderful discussion, and I've learned so much, and I could go on forever, but I don't think either of us have that much time to do that.
Well,
I
hope you'll have fun trying to distill it down into the amount of time that you do have. I would like to say that I would want people to know that Elizabeth Seton's legacy from a spirituality viewpoint really focuses on the Eucharist, and I think that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was really her prism of faith. And she had a deep Marian devotion, and her commitment to charity, compassionate service, and meeting the students where they were and helping them grow is just very important. She loved her sacred scripture, and she read the Bible, and you may realize that there are two Bibles in existence that she wrote in. One is at the University of Notre Dame, and the other one is at Vincennes at the where Simon Brute served in his museum there.
And also at Notre Dame, or
University of Notre Dame. And the other one is at the cathedral in Vincennes.
Oh, okay. Oh, and you edited the book Saint Elizabeth Ann Seton: A Spiritual Portrait, second edition of the Soul of Elizabeth Ann Seton, originally written by Father Joseph Dervin, a CM. He's not around anymore, is he?
No, he's in heaven listening to this recording.
Yes. But this is good. So it's a second edition of this, reissued by Ignatius Press.
Yes.
And people can buy that anywhere the fine books are sold, including Ignatius.com.
Right. Or online through the Seton Shrine at Emmitsburg.
Oh, the Seton. Okay, that's good to know. All right, very good. And you happen to know the website of the Seton Shrine?
Yes, www.seton, Seton, shrine, shrine.org.
Good. That's good to know. So it's on sale there, and hopefully people listen to this, because I didn't know about the Seton Shrine either. From here, that's obviously along the Acela corridor, and I've been on that corridor many times. So I
On the
will have to
Acela
look into that.
corridor, could you repeat that? What you said?
The Acela corridor. That's the Amtrak route from Boston to
okay.
Washington.
Oh, Emmitsburg's not on it, but Washington and Baltimore are.
True. But you must go.
Emmitsburg is 45 minutes away.
It's it's generally. I see what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. But in other words, I could take the train down there and then get a ride or somewhere over to the shrine. Very
Absolutely,
easily. Yes.
absolutely. And I would encourage you to do so. Take a look at the Seton Shrine website, and you'll be impressed. And then you'll be wanting to come and see this. And we're 10 minutes from Gettysburg.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Which I think you've heard of that place, too.
Yes, I have. And now you're talking Gettysburg. That's in Pennsylvania.
Well, it is, but we're just a couple of minutes from the state line.
Yes. Okay. So that gives me a general idea. I got to tell you, I was driving. I had to go to Ohio. I had to go to Franciscan University, and I'm driving through Ohio. So I'm going through, and I'm following the route, and all of a sudden I find myself in West Virginia, which is on the way. Yes. But I'm like, how did I end up in West Virginia?
How did this happen? Yes.
Yeah, but sure enough.
Mount St. Mary's Seminary.
Yes, very much
we're
so.
right down the street.
Oh, okay. Oh, very good.
Their propedeutic program is on our property.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And that's the program where before they go into their theology studies,
yes, exactly.
They learn philosophy. Well, this has been wonderful. I greatly appreciate this conversation.
Well, you're very welcome. I hope that it's useful, and I hope my friends and family in Boston will enjoy it.
And I'm sure they did. In any case, we're all set for this show. We're going to return on Monday with more of the first reading from the Octave of Christmas, which continues. And of course, the Christmas season continues until the baptism of the Lord. So actually, we're continuing through the Christmas season. And we're continuing our series. So we'll see you on Monday. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed weekend. The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.